So I mentioned on my podcast that I recently reread Moneyball. It's my favorite book, and when I read it, highly recommend it. Great book. When I reread it, it kind of got me thinking: could we do something like this for football? And I created a war style thing for football. It's not perfect. It's not exact. I'll get into the details in a second, but I also, when doing this, with this idea in my head, it kind of perfectly coincided with Justin Fields because I wanted to rewatch more Fields tape just simply because everyone keeps saying I'm way too low on him. I'm crazy for not thinking that he's going to be a superstar or just having some concerns about him. So I kind of decided to use these two things together. Create a new stat, which everyone hates stats, but it's not really a stat. It's based more on film study, but just with kind of a twist. And I wanted to apply it and create war. So let's just jump into what Justin Fields' war was for every single game. What you see on the screen is what his war was. So, against Nebraska, he added 0.101 wins. So Penn State was actually his best game. He had a war of nearly 0.3, which is an incredible performance, I would say. His war in the Indiana game and the Northwestern game was abysmal in both. The Northwestern game was actually the second biggest swing he had of any game, but it was a minus. So that's not very good. But, the good tended to outweigh the bad with Fields. His game against Clemson, I think, would surprise some people, given the fact that it's one of his worser games when that's usually propped up as one of his best games. But according to War, that was actually his only his third worst game, so that's not very good. But I can really explain why that is, and I'll explain why that is a little bit later on in this video, why that might be a little bit surprising for some people, but as a whole, pretty good. This was his final statistics, so, his final war ended up being he added 0.698. It was his final war. He added 27.93 points. And if you average that out for a 16-game season, that would mean he added about 1.4 wins total, which is definitely, I would think, pretty good. Although, again, I think some of you might have a question. The question is, what do I do with those numbers? I mean, that means nothing to me because you don't have anything to compare it to. You don't know if 1.4 is awesome or if 1.4 is terrible, just because, how would we know? We know it's better than a replacement level quarterback, but that's just about it. And that's true. And I did kind of have the idea of, I think it could be fun to do this with some of the other quarterbacks and kind of compare. But I'm going to hold off on that for just a second because I do think that there is still some interesting stuff you can take away just from doing war. So first, let me just explain what exactly it is, how I came up with war and how I decided what someone's score is. So basically, the way I calculate war is I take a replacement level player. By the way, I should explain what war is. War is wins above replacement. So wins above in a replacement level player. A replacement level player is, think like a Kyle Allen type, right? Someone who most teams have a guy who can just come up, and that's the kind of player who they can be, right? Not a horrible player, but not a great player either. Replacement level player. So basically what I did was I watched every single snap from Justin Fields, and I said, would a replacement level quarterback, would he have performed this play differently? If the answer is no, that if he was the quarterback, it would have ended the same way, probably, then I do nothing. I move on to the next play. If the answer is yes, well, now I have to figure out a second play. I have to figure out not just what did happen, but what would have happened if Kyle Allen was the quarterback instead. So the way I do that is it's kind of a little bit of educated guessing. So yeah, I mean, this is not an exact science. It's just more of an exact way to measure it than any other statistic that we have going. So that's what I did. I would say, okay, Justin Fields missed that wide open throw, for example, whereas Kyle Allen probably would have made it. So therefore, replacement level player is better. So therefore, Justin Fields, that's a worse play. So I now have two plays: what actually happened and what would have happened if it was a replacement level player. Then what I do is I calculate the point expectancy of what the team would be at after each play. So for example, if there's a touchdown, the point expectancy is 6.94 points because that's it's a little bit under 7 just because there is a chance you miss a field goal, but it's about that much. And then I have a chart that can give me the point expectancy for every single area on the field. It's a little bit outdated. It's from, for one thing, it's using NFL numbers instead of college numbers, but I think that's fine because I'm going to use it for the same. It's not really, there'll be a bit of a difference, but that's not really the whole point. Just because he's an NFL quarterback, and I plan on using this for other NFL quarterbacks. So I think that is fine, quite frankly. And the other issue is that it's from 2012 to 2017. It's a chart I created a few years back when I was blogging, didn't even have a YouTube channel. I created it. I put a lot of work into the chart back in the time, so that's why I'm using it. It would probably take a month for me to create an updated one, so I'm going to just use the out-of-date one. But it's a key chart because then it can kind of let me figure out what's the point expectancy, and then I basically just say, okay, did Justin Fields add points to a replacement level player or subtract points, and how many? And then I have the outcome of that play. And the interesting thing about this is kind of less so just figuring out the pure numbers, and it's more so what it tells me when I watch Justin Fields. Really, it tells me kind of the key things about the positives and negatives of his game. And because, I'm watching these plays and I see the ones that are big swing plays. I see the ones that are massively good and massively bad. And I think that's really the key reason why using WAR, I think, is a key component, is not necessarily using it just to use it and get the statistic, but more so what it tells us. So I want to talk about a play like this. Yeah, I'm gonna show some plays. I paused it, but I'm gonna play it in just a second. One of the key issues with this sort of method, and I want to be very clear about all the issues up front. Again, this is not a perfect statistic. This is not meant to be an end all be all. It's just an additional tool to be used. That's the whole reason I'm using it. So basically, the way this works is that the issue with this is the player on the top of the screen is going to get open. The player on the bottom of the screen is not going to get open, but Fields is going to throw it to the player on the bottom of the screen. Like, watch, right? When this play starts, you notice that Fields, kind of stares down a receiver, tries to make a tight throw, isn't quite complete. I'll rewind it and you can see the other side. The player up there would have been wide open, but Fields just didn't see that. I did not include this in WAR, positive or negative, even though maybe some people could have. My issue, and one of the big issues with WAR, is just I'm not in the huddle. I don't know for a fact what everyone's read is. I don't know what the play is. So some plays are similar, some plays are different. And sometimes you think you know something and you turn out to be wrong. And undoubtedly, there will be some plays that I said, oh, horrible read by Fields, but actually it wasn't a bad read. It was just something else that happened. And undoubtedly, I'll probably say, oh, good read by Fields, and there's actually something else even more open that makes it look even worse. On top of this, I'm using broadcast footage, which makes things twice as difficult. So without a doubt, there's going to be some issues. So maybe pay less attention to the actual number itself and just pay more attention to the rest of this video and kind of what my findings were and what I really learned while going through this process. Because to me, with this kind of mindset, it really is more about the journey than the destination. So a couple more plays. Fields is going to miss a deep throw right here. Those are actually huge. Missing a deep throw is a big deal. I mean, now you're costing yourself points because a replacement level player, in my opinion, would have thrown that one closer to Fields' left, which would have made for a wide open touchdown instead of for a contested catch. Like also one like this, you're going to see the receiver gets wide open, but Fields does not make that throw. To me, that is a bad throw. That one should have been caught, and I think that it is fair to dock him the points on that play. In fact, that was probably one of my first big takeaways when doing this evaluation, was just a lot of these throws were replacement level a replacement level quarterback would have made. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. These aren't high degree of difficulty type plays, so he's not really adding too much. And is it fair to dock him for that because he happens to play for a great offense? Well, maybe not, but according to the system, he doesn't get docked, but he just doesn't get extra credit for a receiver being wide open in the back of the end zone that he had nothing to do with. Now, there were some plays like this, which is just going to be an awesome throw, and that's just definitely points added there. I mean, this one, there's not even a really debate about. I mean, that's just an incredible throw. Absolutely, he deserves credit for that. And so there were a few really good deep balls, but I would say that there weren't quite as many as some people would have thought of. So that's another thing that, again, using this system, I think it just gets you to view things through a different lens, which I think actually, in my opinion, gets me to sort of realize kind of what value he legitimately has. There was one thing that I realized was a huge issue that I kind of talked about as it's something I brought up as an issue, but I kind of talked about pocket presence. But now that I more watch it, it seems less pocket presence and more just noticing that there's a blitz. That was a huge issue in his grading scale and cost him a ton of points just not picking up obvious blitzes. Like watch how on this one where there's a blitz and Fields just never notices it and gets sacked when I would say that a replacement level quarterback would have been able to throw the ball away. Maybe not getting a completion, but maybe even get a completion because there was a check down completely wide open. And I think most quarterbacks that are in the NFL would have picked up that there's a blitz and known to get rid of the ball quickly, or at least that should have been an option. Even if you disagree with that one, that's fine because there's now, I have a sample size of over hundreds of plays now that I was able to use, or at least over 100 plays that I was able to use with Fields. So because of that, it kind of now means that even if I make a mistake or two, it's not really going to be an issue unless I make a ton of mistakes. Now, you also will notice some positives. Like, for one thing, one of the big positives I noticed of Fields is just how great his running ability really is. Like, watch right here. There is a blitz that he didn't really notice too well, but he gets out of the pressure, and then look how he picks up the first down on a 3rd down and 3 just outside field goal range. So that's actually a huge swing. Picking up a 3rd down or not picking up a 3rd down is a key way to get or lose points, and him using his legs to get it, that's absolutely vital. In fact, I completely am now on, the page of, for Chicago, use his running ability. Make him a runner. Don't just force him to be a thrower. I'm not sure if he's good enough to just be a thrower, quite frankly. But I do know that if you have him use his running ability to set things up, that's how he could be not just a solid quarterback, but a star. You have to use his running ability, though, because in college, that was probably his best asset, was just him running with the football. So that's something that I think that is very key and a clear positive in my mind that wasn't as clear of a positive before I did it this way. So again, I knew it was good. Obviously, I knew his running ability was good, but I didn't realize just how much good swing plays he had from running with the football. And there was a ton. So that's something that, again, you can't sign someone off the streets that's going to do that, but Justin Fields can. The one last thing I want to talk about in this video is going to be that Clemson game. A lot of people are still probably a little bit confused about why that one, his WAR was only 0.065, whereas in some other games it was, the Penn State game, it was 0.299. So, I mean, way higher than that. And the reason for it was because, well, a lot of those great deep passes were passes that I say a replacement level NFL quarterback could still make. They weren't plays that were overly impressive and could still make consistently too, not just like, a one-off. Plays that I think they probably would make every single time. There was one that was kind of a miss where a receiver, caught it but kind of fell down because it was a little bit off. So it got him 1st and goal inside of 10 instead of a touchdown. So docked him like a point. Wasn't that big of a deal. He did have one that I did give him credit for a deep pass, but there was only one. Maybe there was 2. There was 1 or 2 that actually gave him the full points, and he had just a straight up miss. It was this one right here. So, this is just going to be a complete straight up miss, and that cost you a touchdown right there. So that's going to dock you a good amount of points. That one docks you just as many points as the great deep pass he had also in the game gained him. And I just looked it up. He did have 2 positive deep passes. He had a play that got him 5.41 points on just one play, but also the one I just showed you cost him 4.51 points on that play. So that's a huge swing and kind of why, he added 12.51 points in that game, but he lost 9.9 points in that game. So if you want to compare that to the Penn State game, he added 15.9 points. So only added about 3 less points than he did in the Penn State game. But he, in the Penn State game, he only cost his team 3.94. So it's just when you cost your team some points with missed throws or missed reads or not picking up a blitz or, a number of things, it could be, not being fast enough on certain plays. That could happen. Although for Fields, that was definitely never the case. I'm just saying it could, in theory, be that. That's going to cost you points, and that can be kind of the thing that people don't mention as much. So Also, should be mentioned, kind of one big thing I've talked about for a while is just that there's a difference between being a good college quarterback and a good NFL quarterback. But I think using this war, like I said, it's the journey, not the destination. It's more about the findings that I came up with. And I found some really interesting stuff, I would say. And it really makes me want to do this with the other quarterbacks now. I wish I did this earlier because it definitely it kind of opens my eyes to like how, wow, he was a great runner. That's absolutely true. Also, wow, he really needs to work on his blitz pickup. That was not good last year. If you feel like you can fix that, I think he'll be a really good quarterback because, rarely did I dock him too many points for a bad read or for a missed throw. They happened, but it was rare. Most of the missed throws were actually deep. I think his over the field middle accuracy is much better than his deep accuracy. So again, that's tough. You want to be able to hit those deep passes. There's a lot of points there. Those are important plays. So it's interesting, and I'm interested in seeing what else happens. I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you agree with these findings? Do you disagree with these findings? Do you disagree with how I came up with this process in general? Are you confused about what war is? I'm going to try and write it out at some point and maybe put it in the comments or something, just to really explain exactly how it is. But to me, in my head, this makes perfect sense, and this was really cool to see. I'm not sure if that works for everyone else, but I hope it does, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, as always, thanks for watching.